St. Patrick's Day. Welcome to the Kinship Care Lunch and Learn series sponsored by the Times Union. We're excited to have Prevent Child Abuse New York Director of Policy Jenn O'Connor here with us today to talk about ACEs and protective factors. But first, I'd like to pass it over to Ann Curcarito from the Times Union Media Group to welcome us here today. Ann?
Good afternoon. Thank you. Just wanted to welcome everybody and to let you know that we support the New York State Kinship Caregiver Program and are big believers in making sure that we're promoting what's best with this program. And I'm always referring folks to this program. So they have a lot of great things. So if anybody needs anything Times Union related, feel free to reach out to me. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Ann. I am a subscriber to the Times Union, can personally say that I read it every single day. So highly recommend especially if you're in the Capital District area, subscribing to the Times Union, going to their website as well. And thank you so much to Ann and to the Times Union for sponsoring this series. This is the second time they've sponsored this series in the last 2 years. So we really appreciate you guys so much. Thank you. If this is your first time with us at the Lunch and Learn series, we've done quite a few of these now. I think we've been going for over a year. So there are quite a few different topics that we've covered. We're doing this series once a month as part of the coalition outreach and as part of the Navigator outreach. You can check out our YouTube page. A recording of each of these Lunch and Learn series goes up on our YouTube page, usually within a few days of the event actually happening live. So be sure to check that out. We have a link to the YouTube page also on the Kinship Navigator website. So you can see some of the other topics here that we've covered recently. If any of those interest you, a copy of this PowerPoint presentation will be going around to folks, so you can click these links live. Our next Lunch and Learn is going to be Thursday, April 21st. We're going to be discussing seniors, SNAP, which is the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, and e-enrollment with Hunger Solutions. So we're really excited about that. If those are topics that interest you or interest the folks that you're working with, make sure to save that date, April 21st on Thursday, 12 to 12:30. I am Ryan Johnson. I'm the Associate Director of the New York State Kinship Navigator. Happy to have you all here today. Looking forward to a great topic with Prevent Child Abuse. But first, I want to talk a little bit about the Kinship Navigator. If you're not familiar with the Kinship Navigator, which many of you will be, but if you're not, we are the statewide group. We are responsible for information, referral, education, and advocacy in all 62 counties in New York State. So we have a lot of information related to kinship care on our website. So be sure to check out our legal fact sheets and county resources. If you want to talk directly to a helpline staff, you can call our helpline. It's open Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. I believe the next slide is going to have the telephone number there for you. We refer out to local support groups and case management programs throughout the state and the limited legal referral network we are connected to also. We do a lot of presentations, again, online video archive on nysnavigator.org. Be sure to check that out. That's also where you'll find a lot of the Lunch and Learn material as well. And we do advocacy. Here's our helpline number, 877-454-6463, and the website for the Kinship Navigator, nysnavigator.org. Be sure to check us out. Be sure to like and subscribe on the YouTube channel and make sure you're not missing any of these future Lunch and Learn series either. This is just a brief view of our new website, which launched very recently. So if you've gone to our website and you're noticing that it's new, it is. And so a lot of the information that you would have normally found in the middle of the page is now along the top of the page. Just wanted to highlight that for folks. Also, be sure to use the chat feature in the lower right-hand corner of the Navigator's homepage to chat live with an agent during business hours, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. The Kinship Navigator has also been doing virtual case management. So not only do we do information and referral in all 62 counties, but in the counties that you see listed on this slide, we also offer virtual case management. That is a more intensive service that the Kinship Navigator provides in a limited number of counties, but all of these counties are counties that don't have local case management services available. So this is a service that for kinship caregivers can come in really handy to have access to a case manager who helps them apply for benefits, facilitate referrals to community agencies, and gets a lot of follow-up from the case manager. So if you reside in one of these counties, be sure to, if you call our helpline, the 877 number, you'll get connected to a case manager that's covering your county. If you're a provider and you want to refer a kinship caregiver to our service, you can download the permission to contact form. It's the best way to ensure that caregivers are connected to by the Kinship Navigator. We will call them with their permission. So you can download the permission to contact form on our website. Again, this presentation will go out to everybody who signed up for it today. So you can use that link on the screen that you see to download the permission to contact form as well. I'm happy to have Jenn O'Connor. She's the Director of Policy and Advocacy and the Director of the New York State Home Visiting Coordination Initiative at Prevent Child Abuse New York. Prevent Child Abuse New York is the only private nonprofit agency serving the entire state whose single mission it is to prevent child abuse in all of its forms. They remove barriers to healthy parenting through public awareness, training, and technical assistance and policy work and advocacy. Jenn is a great advocate in this arena, and I'm happy to have her here with us today. Jenn, I'll advance the slides for you. I'll try to be intuitive about it, but we're looking forward to hearing more from you today.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you for having me, and thank you for your support as well. And everybody, I am excited to talk to you, and hopefully we can talk. If you have questions, if you have comments, anything you don't understand or anything you want to add to the conversation, please just put it in the chat. So I'm not just rambling on. I'm going to start by talking to you about ACES. And I don't want to assume that everyone understands ACES, but probably a number of you are pretty familiar. So don't be insulted if I back up a little bit and start in the early 90s. There was a study done by the CDC and Kaiser Permanente Insurance that looked at a cohort of folks, middle-aged, middle class, white, college educated, who were experiencing chronic diseases. And so the researchers looked at them and tried to get a handle on what the commonality was for all of them. And what it turned out to be was that they had experienced what is now known as an adverse childhood experience, some sort of trauma in their childhood. And I'll show you in a minute just kind of the list of different ACEs, but I want to be clear that the list of ACEs that the study showed back in the 90s remains today. There are 10 kind of known ACEs, but then we also now take into account things like neighborhood violence and institutional racism. And so there is greater understanding that poverty, for example, could certainly be an adverse childhood experience. But the correlation between this childhood trauma and these chronic physical health problems like hypertension and diabetes really kind of, the more ACEs someone had in their childhood, the greater their list of chronic diseases. And that was what got people's attention because, of course, suddenly it's a public health emergency. So next slide, and I'll walk you through a little bit of what the ACEs are. And again, these are kind of, we call them the top 10 at this point, but they are abuse, physical, emotional, sexual, including neglect. And then there are things that fall under kind of the household ACEs, if you will. So parental mental illness and substance abuse, incarceration of a parent. I'm looking over here. Divorce is another one. So basically a disruption in the household. And the next slide shows you the actual impact. So again, as your number of ACEs goes up, your risk of chronic health conditions goes up as well. And we know that your risk of other things like teenage pregnancy, dropping out of high school, not being able to hold a job, all of those things increase as well. And you can have all of these different behaviors that may, you may see in the children that you are caring for, the children that you work with, that they have a difficult time with executive function, right? They maybe act out at home or in school. And this is a direct result of their ACEs. What I'm going to talk about a little bit as we go forward is how to mitigate those ACEs, because what it's really important to understand is that ACEs do not doom you, and they do not define you. And so there are things that we can do to mitigate those ACEs. But first, I want to focus a little bit on what an actual response to an adverse childhood experience looks like. And you kind of have to put yourself in the shoes of a child who goes home every night, say, to parents who are fighting, and maybe there's domestic violence in the home. And so that stress that child lives with all the time impacts them physically. And you're going to see their behavior change when they go out into the world, whether it's school or after school programs or socializing with friends. You're going to see that behavior. And I'm sure that everyone here has probably at one point or another had a fight, flight, or freeze response. Think about crossing the street and all of a sudden you look up and there's a car barreling towards you and you don't know if it's going to stop or not. Do you, run for the other side, or do you stop in your tracks? That's fight, flight, or freeze right there. Imagine that car is coming at you constantly in the form of a violent parent, right? So this is what happens, and it's very clinical, it's very technical, but I'm sure that everyone can kind of relate to this. When you're in that fight, flight, or freeze moment, your stress hormones go crazy. You have this release of cortisol. Your heart rate goes up, your blood pressure goes up, you're breathing heavily. Everything maybe closes in on you. If you've ever had a panic attack, that's what this is. And it is completely understandable from a physiological standpoint what happens. And so, think about how this has probably happened to you at one point or another, and then put yourself again in kind of the shoes of a 5-year-old where this happens on a daily basis. So toxic stress, and this gets us to the next level. So toxic stress is when it's not just one period of trauma that happens. It's not just the divorce, it's the ongoing custody battle. It's the constant whatever it is that is causing stress in your home. So it's not, and I don't want to say that one physical altercation or one incident of physical abuse is not enough. It's certainly way too many, but being hit once and being hit every single day for 18 years there's a cumulative effect, right? So this is what toxic stress is. It's what happens when there is frequent and prolonged exposure to ACEs. So again, your executive functioning is changed, it's altered. You have a hard time making decisions. You have a hard time thinking things through and compartmentalizing. You really have a hard time planning. We see kids, my own kid who endured years and years of toxic stress with her biological family, has a very hard time holding down a job because she cannot focus. Focus is just out the window for her. For a lot of these kids, it looks like ADHD. And so that's something to keep in mind when you're looking at the kids in your care. Again, there's a disruption to physical conditions of the body for certain people. So you get those chronic health problems, and you also just have, different self-coping mechanisms, right? People overeat, maybe they undereat. People smoke, teenagers have sex. They are trying to find stability and structure somewhere, and it's not always the healthiest place. And then again, toxic stress, just emotionally exhausting for anyone. If you can't trust the adults in your home, then who can you trust? And so again, we'll talk a little bit on the next slide in terms of protective factors. And so these are the 5 protective factors, and I'll get a little specific around each one of them, but they are parental resilience, social connections, concrete support in time of need, knowledge of parenting and child development, and social emotional competence of children. So kind of taking these one by one, you're a protective factor. You know, you are, you could be that nurturing adult in a child's life that helps them to mitigate all the trauma that has come before and all the toxic stress that they maybe continue to endure. If you've got a kid who is experiencing toxic stress in their home, and you are a teacher or a camp counselor or a social worker, you know, you could become that alternate adult for them, to lend that, that relationship to them. Building parental resilience is what we really hope, because we understand that there are those folks outside of your parents who can serve those roles. But what we want ideally is for parents to be, you know, to have their needs met, to have their basic needs taken care of. If you are a single mom working 2 jobs with a couple of kids at home and you do not have adequate affordable childcare, you are going to be stressed out and you're not going to be able to work, and you might leave those kids home alone. And so what can we do to support you and to build your resilience so that you can find the childcare that you need? How do we get you that? How do we help you with that? And how do we help you to make really good decisions for those kids? Social connections. Again, it's all about relationships, right? So in kinship, it's the social connections the children have to kin, and it's the social relationships that kinship caregivers have to others. So there's self-care involved here. You cannot do what you do without having a community of folks behind you. Even if it's just one person, frankly, to call and vent at and bounce ideas off of, you need those social connections. Concrete support in a time of need. If your car doesn't start in the morning, what do you do? Who do you call? Is there a neighbor that can jumpstart your car? Do you have AAA? Do you have a bus pass? Are you able to deal with that issue, right? And move on. And it's the same thing in terms of, you know, is there a roof over your head? Is there childcare for your child? Is there food for the family? Those are all concrete supports. Knowledge of parenting. We always say this, that children do not come with a manual. You know, you have a baby and they send you home from the hospital a day or 2 later and you're on your own. If you have taken custody of, you know, a grandchild, you know that grandchild on a certain level. You have not been their parent. You are not a teacher or a special education expert. And so, you know, what do you know about parenting and child development? And so, again, another protective factor is building that up so that people understand, you know, developmental milestones. And this gets into the next and last protective factor, which is understanding the social emotional competence of children. It's understanding that your 6-month-old is not ready to walk. And it's understanding why a baby might be crying, you know, the 10 different reasons that a baby might be crying. If you don't understand those things, then you are much more apt to have that knee-jerk reaction when the baby is crying, right? You think about the horrible example of shaken baby syndrome, and why do people, you know, shake babies out of frustration and stress, and they won't stop crying, and I don't understand why, and I don't know what to do, and I don't have that concrete support. I don't have somebody that I can call in the moment so that I can put the baby down and walk away. That's where, you know, from what I do at Prevent Child Abuse New York, is we think about what leads people to abuse and neglect their children. We are much less focused on the actual, right, what happened here, but what led us to that point. So I'm going to repeat myself with the next slide, but no one is doomed by their ACEs. You can have one ACE, say divorce, which is super common, and absolutely no protective factors around you helping you through your parents' divorce, and you could be a mess. You could have 9 ACEs and a whole community of people who are rallying around you and supporting you, and you'll be able to function and you will be able to be, you know, a successful adult. So it really is kind of an offset of both of these. And I think it's really important to remember that you are a protective factor. So I'm going to run through some of our work here really quickly, and that's around the mandated reporter piece. Some of you may be mandated reporters, you may not be mandated reporters, but in a nutshell, there are thousands of mandated reporters in the state of New York, and these are the folks who are mandated to report abuse or neglect when they see it or suspect it. We worked last year with the New York State Legislature to get legislation passed that includes ACEs and protective factors, because we felt that it was really important for anyone who's a mandated reporter, teachers, pediatricians, social workers, law enforcement, to have a basis and an understanding of certain things. And so the training will include, next slide, ACEs, protective factors, implicit bias, and the identification of child abuse virtually. So we have convened a number of different advisory groups in different professions. So again, we've had early educators come to the table, secondary education come to the table, social workers, human services, healthcare professionals, and parents, as well as a special implicit bias group, to come inform our work, which we have then put into several different documents and recommendations and shared with the New York State Office of Children and Families as they put together this transformation of their online mandated reporter training, which has not been updated in at least 30 years. So what we hope that people will come away with after they've taken that training is this foundation to be able to do what I just went over with you, to understand what ACEs are, what protective factors are, how they can work together, and one can offset the other, and having a real kind of grounding in the brain science and the physical piece of this. And again, understanding just if you meet people's basic needs, they are so much better off. So this mandated reporter training will be launched this summer. We do training along the lines of mandated reporter training with other groups of folks who are not mandated reporters. So with parents and with other community members, we really, really believe that laying this foundation and having people embrace the brain science and understand trauma-informed practice gets us to healthier relationships. So one last plug here, you know, if you're advocates, I mean, I am assuming right now that you have a child in your care that you fight for every day. And so that's enough. You've got your hands full with that. But what our organization does is make advocacy on a statewide level easier. So if you're interested, sign up for our newsletter, and we will keep you apprised of everything that we're doing and give you some options to, you know, call your legislator and tell them that that this bill, this legislation is important and you love it, or this bill is not great and you hate it. We will give those opportunities. And we also have a lot of training opportunities and opportunities for people to kind of come together as communities. Again, we do some work around actual child abuse and neglect, but our work is really around the broader kind of holistic approach. So we work a lot on childcare and home visiting. We support a number of primary prevention programs. Again, just building that foundation for families and members of the community so that they are there in a really well-informed place for children. So I'm going to stop talking at you. There's my contact information. If there are any questions, I'd love to take them. If there aren't, totally understand. And you have my email. You can, think about it over the weekend and shoot me a note. We love to connect with groups and especially with people who are out there actually doing the work. I can talk a lot about children and families, but your voices are incredibly important. It's where policy meets practice. So thank you again for having me.
Thanks so much for being here with us, Jen. If any questions do come in, I'll be sure to let you know. But for folks on the call today, you can reach Jen directly at the email address provided. That concludes today's Lunch and Learn. So thank you everybody for taking part today. We look forward to seeing you again on April 21st. Have a great day, everybody.